Welcome back. It's time for Black and White, where we take a look at social issues. And today we're focusing on a video that has made headlines and been circulating on social media. It's all about that young man who was on top of the rooftop of his penthouse, as he terms it, and he had some choice words to use to describe some of his classmates and what he would like to do to them. And of course, he was also talking about sexuality. And these are things that you would not typically expect from a preteen, but there you go. We are all shocked by it. We can't even play it on national TV because of the nature of the language, how heavy it was. But of course, it led to a lot of questions about parenting. What is missing? Is modern society making us so busy that we have no time to take care of our kids? But of course, I'm no expert. That's why we have a special panel today that is comprised of Mofat Kago, who is a psychologist. We have John Willis Joroge, who is an author of Father and Son, as well as, last but not least, Caroline Chakua, who is a parenting coach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I just want to pick your brains, first of all. When you saw that video and the things that kid had to say, I'll start with you, Mr. Kago. What was the first thing that came to mind? Because I'm averse to the notion that it's all about single parenthood. He's like that because he doesn't have a dad, or what the reasons we are all trying to give to his behavior. What came to your mind?
Thank you. When I saw that, first of all, I must say that I felt sad. But again, what came to my mind is that this is a child who really needs help, probably because of some of the issues he has been exposed to, probably because he may have gone through issues that we do not know. And one of the things that came to my mind is that chances are that this is a child who has gone through painful experiences,
yes,
trauma, and a child who seems to have caregivers who are not very close to where he is.
Okay.
Yes.
And you, Ms. Chakua, what do you feel when you saw that?
I just thought this is a fruit of something that has gone on for a very long time. Right. So there is a lot of underlying issues there. And he definitely has soaked a lot of toxicity from his environment. And, you know, once you soak toxicity, when you're under pressure, that's the only thing that you'll get out. So you soak in poison, you'll get out poison. So for me, I'm curious actually as to the kind of environment that he has been exposed to. But I was also so that he was articulate. I mean, I saw potential there. You know, he's actually articulate. And so with the right environment, I can imagine how much we can do with him, or that can be done with him to bring out that potential.
Okay, John Willis, your first initial, thoughts when you saw it?
I think for me it was, he just expressed who we are as a society. And it's simply amplifying what has been there. And I think what shocked me was we actually expected different from this young man, and yet we are the same people who express ourselves the same way. And I think adults were shocked because a child did what adults should be doing.
Or usually do. Yeah, so you have said the things that you thought would come out, because we don't know this kid personally, we don't know the mom, so we don't know exactly what came out, but is the cause of his behavior. But at the same time, this is in our society, and then he did that, came back with another video where he was apologizing, obviously after being castigated and the video going viral and everybody being asking for him to be suspended. And then later on emerged another video where he brought along his cousin, who was equally very belligerent in another video. So it shows that it's not just him, it seems to be a societal problem. And what would you exhaustively say are the causes of such kind of behavior? Is it exposure? Is it, like you said, a lack of, intentional parenting? What is it?
You know, when it comes to children, and when we look at the developmental stages of a human being, during the formative years, you will realize that what children swallow, deposit into their internal selves. it becomes very hard for them to unlearn because it is growing with them. And therefore, I would say that, like my colleagues have said, this is something that these children may have, to a very great extent, copied from someone.
Yes.
Somebody said that you need not to worry that children are not obeying you, but you really need to worry that they are watching you.
Okay.
And therefore, for me, I tend to think that this boy actually is not to blame as far as I'm concerned. This is something that is in the society. He's just chewing cards of that which he has been fed on.
Yeah.
And therefore, it will require work for us to be able to change that narrative.
Yes.
Otherwise, I also tend to feel that this is somebody who has not been shown love and validation in the course of his growing up, and therefore his attachment style is a little bit impaired. Yeah. And therefore, if only he had someone who is going to be non-judgmental, somebody who is going to feel him, to get into his shoes and feel his pains, because it appears to me that this is somebody who is boiling up because of something that have persistently been stored up in him. And therefore, he's just venting out. And for me, I think this boy is acting out. And I think the best thing would be to look at the underlying issues so that he can be assisted.
So as we look or try to figure out the underlying issues, there's also the issue of kids are not entirely as innocent as we would think.
Yeah.
Many of them know that this is a bad word. This is a bad word. So when they hear it, they know, hey, that word is not supposed to be used. But then look at the flow of insults that was coming out of him. What does that point to? Because there's a child who can tell the difference between good or bad. They're not entirely foolish, but then you come to a point where this one is literally just spewing it out towards his classmates or whoever he was talking about. What is the problem there?
You know, this is very profound because when children are born, they are like empty computers. And what we put on, and that is why we have caregivers, we have parents, to be able to instill values, to be able to instill virtues as this child grows, because the brain is able to assimilate a lot of things.
Yes.
And therefore, if you ask me, I would say that this child does not have any other positive resources which he can use as the yardstick. You know, when you bring up a child and you instill the right values and morals and all that, they are able to work as their yardstick. Yes. Anything else that comes, they are able to measure it against what you have instilled. And for me, I think the caregivers who've been around this child, I think to some extent, they failed him.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, as a parenting coach, you see a kid who is just flowing. The insults are coming out like it's second nature, and obviously that points to an underlying issue. I've had a lot of people blaming the single mom for his behavior. What do you think went wrong in terms of parenting? And is it entirely true that when somebody comes up from a single parent, then they're automatically damaged?
I want to look at that from a bigger picture perspective.
Yes.
And let me just read something here that a quote that says, let me find it. There's someone who once said that the children now love luxury. They have bad manners. They have contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants. They are not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents. They chatter before company. They gobble up dainties at the table. They cross their legs and they tyrannize their teachers.
Okay.
This was said by Socrates, who lived between 469 and 399 BC.
I was about to ask you, but that's not new. It's been happening forever.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's been happening forever. So I think we are up in arms thinking that it's just children of nowadays. It's just things that are happening now. But every generation has always thought the children of nowadays are just
rotten.
Terrible. And so we need to step back from all that rising up in arms and reactivity and ask ourselves, why do human beings behave the way they do?
Yes.
That's where we need to look at. So for me, single parent, I mean, you can have all kinds of researches, and there are those that will show you children who have grown up in single parent homes have resilience.
Yes.
Then you find that the same children, or I mean, other children who have grown up in the same single parent homes have issues. So for me, it's not an issue of single parent or not.
Yeah.
It's the times we are in. Let us stop reacting and let us ask ourselves, why do human beings behave the way they do? So as a parenting coach, what I look at is the parent themselves. Okay, if the parent is stable, if the parent is on their feet, if the parent is more self-aware, then they're aware of the kind of the environment they need to give to their children.
Yes.
So because that's what the children will soak. So it's not about whether children know right or wrong. That is important. But do we have stable adults in our space to take care of these children?
And do you think this could be a simple issue of just teenage or preteen rebellion?
It's not a simple issue of preteen rebellion. I think that, at different developmental stages, there are behaviors that come out. I go back to, this is an environment this boy has soaked, and the environment really reflects what John Will said is where we are at as a society.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. John Willis, what's your take on the deeper underlying issues that this boy could be facing?
Actually, I would echo what my sister said, because what shocked me was our reaction as a society. We actually started insulting the child who had insulted another child.
Yeah.
So my question is, who is the adult here?
Exactly.
And why are we accusing this child? And our response to the child is the same way the child treated another child.
Absolutely.
And so I think we need to have an introspective search as a society. And I think adults are sick compared to these children.
Right.
Because this child is actually bringing out who we are as a society. When you talk about social injustice, how women are treated in the society, how we degrade each other, and how we try, like now, even the parent, I want my child to be better than my sister's child. So we create that competition, it's not complementing. So this child gets to acquire these values from the society. And I think what we need to do is search ourselves and ask ourselves as a society, why did we respond the way we did?
We did, yeah.
And number two, we propagated cyberbullying.
True.
This is a child. And we forwarded these clips everywhere. I even saw the neighbors, they had analyzed the family.
Yes.
And my friend, I wonder what moral authority we have to actually analyze another family and post it on social media without their consent.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to remember we're dealing with a child. We're not dealing with an adult who's misbehaving. And this is a child that could be molded. Because what I saw is that after it came out, he came back with another video where he looked remorseful. Right? He was sad, he looked a bit intimidated, but then later on he came up with a new energy, still speaking the same things. And I mean, could it be that cyberbullying made him feel like he needs to actually push back and protect himself with the same kind of language? Okay.
Yeah, what you are saying is true.
Yeah.
But again, I'm looking at it this way. When you look at what Sigmund Freud says, when to be able to be using the layman's language, the three domains of a person, where we have the ego, superego, and the id, and id being the one that we are born with, all of us. We call it the pleasure principle, and I tend to think probably because of lack of good support in his growing up. This id, because we say id is a pleasure principle, it doesn't question anything else, whether it is right or wrong. Because when you have the ego and superego, they are able to question what id is saying. And everybody, including grown-ups, we do have id. And that is why you realize there are some people who are grown-ups, and because id is so much active in them, they are not able to control themselves. That is why you may feel hungry right now, but you tell yourself it's not yet time for you to go and take something. But for children who have not been, whose id has not been tamed by their caregivers, you realize it's likely to push them to the extreme.
Okay.
And that, again, coupled with the environment.
Yes.
And if you listen, the way I listen to this child, he is reacting to somebody who has bullied him.
Yes.
Okay?
True.
And the question is, what has been happening, in the life of this child?
Yes.
Has he been bullied in school? Because sometimes you realize that bullies will also want to bully, to just validate themselves and to disagree with what probably others might be thinking. I have been toppled. I do not have authority.
Hurt people,
but people have been asking and bashing the mother, single parenting. But the first question that came to my mind was, where is the father?
The dad, exactly.
Where is the dad? Because again, you realize we are also failing the society as fathers, because this is a child who actually needs to walk with someone who can guide him and someone who can tell him that this is the way you negotiate some of the issues and painful moments that come to us, because life is about frustrations. And the moment you get frustration, the best thing for us to do is to allow the frustrations to flow out, because we are healthy human beings. But the moment we are not healthy human beings, the moment frustrations get inside us, instead of it flowing out, the first thing that we do is to try to change the situation.
Okay.
But not every situation we are able to change.
Changed.
Therefore, what happens next is to begin to fight and aggression. And that is where children, even will start abusing drugs, they will become bullies, because they are trying to vent out something that is so much locked inside themselves.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Interesting. Ms. Jaco, as a live parenting coach, if I brought you the mom and this kid after all this circus and drama, where would you start?
I would ask the mom to take a deep breath, to breathe in, hold, and breathe out.
Yeah.
And let them know that there is hope. We can start somewhere, but we have to start with her. Working with parents, what I've come to discover is that there's no parent who sets out to spoil their children. No one in their okay mind, I'm not saying right or abnormal, normal, just in their okayness, sets out to destroy their child.
Right.
So there has to be a level of brokenness for someone to neglect, if that is what happened, for someone to neglect their child. And so I would definitely start with the mom,
mother.
get them to take a deep breath and just really introspect and start looking at where they are at. We have found that a lot, what happens with parents is that we actually, now that we are adults and we have children in our spaces, we use them to complete us. We use them to heal the pains that we have not processed, we have not dealt with. And so it's really a matter of asking yourself as a parent, how do I separate this behavior? And let's not even just look at that mom and the child. Whoever is watching who has children, there's certain behaviors that you actually want to see change in your child. The first thing is to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Why do I really want this behavior change? And let's remember that behavior is an outcome. There are seeds that were planted. There's an environment in there. So for whatever outcome of behavior that you want in your child, you need to think about what seeds do I desire to plant in the child and in the soil, actually, and what kind of environment do we want? But even as you figure that out, you ask yourself, what kind of person do I need to be to be able to provide that environment? And it brings back the introspection.
Yes.
So if we are able to just stop looking at what is outside, because that's already something that's done, and go back to ourselves and ask ourselves, how am I using my child to complete me?
Okay.
Why is it so important for my child to behave a certain way, or to behave perfectly, or to have great grades, or to look like they are respectful? Why is it so important to me? Is it really about me, or is it really about what I want for this child? So once I figure that out with the mother, then we walk a journey of healing whatever brokenness that has been there. We don't even need to Google about parenting.
Yeah.
If you're okay, you don't need to Google about parenting, actually, because you're parenting from a place of confidence.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, John Willis, there has been talk of suspension for him, and of course, I'm wondering how helpful that would be, because he would go away and come back if nothing is done. And of course, in terms of the institution and how they're handling these kids, what do you think can be done? Because from what he says, you can tell that there are cliques in the school. There's bullying, there's gossip, and there's a bit of questioning their sexuality. So it's not just his problem or his family's problem. It also goes to the school environment. So what do you think can be done to fix that particular environment that this kid is coming from? Well, you'll suspend him, but there's his friends, his clique is still in school, and he'll come back to the same behavior that's happening there.
That's a very good question. And I would want to start by saying that as a society, we need to realize that when you have a child in your neighborhood, it's a statement of trust from their maker, that you can actually play part in that child's life. Now, number two, I went to a school where no one was expelled, but the principal became a father to all.
Right.
And he created time for them. And I think as a society, we like blaming instead of facing the issues that are there in our society. And that is why we talk about single mothers and all that. Now, coming back to expelling a child, I don't think that is a solution. And someone actually had recommended, I saw it online, that this child should be in jail or something like that. And that's weird.
Yeah.
Because as adults, when did we get to that space where our response to training a child is sending them to jail or even expelling them from our society? And it's simply because we don't want to see us.
Right.
Because this child is revealing our failures as a society. Now, when it comes to changing the environment, I think we need to understand that this generation is the most informed generation that we have, because they know so much.
Yeah.
And you cannot influence them forcefully. You have to influence them without imposing yourself to them, reasoning with them, and also providing guidelines on how they can comprehend some of these issues. Also allowing them to own the process. Because if they don't own the process, then you are imposing and they will rebel at some point. And I think it's very, very important for us to be intentional about it, intentional about care, intentional about our own care, self-care, so that I like what she said, that you're parenting from a place of confidence.
Yes.
And I think adults need therapy in our society. So for us to change that environment, we need to influence the teachers, we need to influence the parents before we even talk to the child, because we need to create a support system for this child.
Now, as we're just, creating an ecosystem that is sustainable for that wholesome behavior and, discipline, and basically so that they can focus on why they're in school, which is education, there's also the psychological aspect. So if you were to provide solutions and a cure for this kid, and where would you start, Mr. Kago?
There is an example I like giving from the Bible.
Right.
Because I also believe in the Bible. The Samaritan woman, whom the society knew, and it was true that she was a prostitute.
Yeah.
But when Jesus met this woman at the well, he did not start his statement by being judgmental.
No.
Neither did he bash her, but he told her, "Give me some drink."
Yeah.
They started on that very normal conversation.
Yes.
Then, to cut the long story short, this woman felt that Jesus was able to feel her.
Yes.
And that is what we are lacking in our society.
Okay.
Even in our schools. Like those who are suggesting that the boy be expelled is because we are not able to feel these children or this child where they are, from where they are.
It's like empathy.
Yes, they lack empathy. And this is the greatest tragedy. And for me, I think I would like to establish a system whereby this boy and, of course, others, they feel loved, they feel appreciated, creating an atmosphere of love and caring.
Right.
Because that is the only way to a person's heart. And I like saying that it is important that we learn the art of parenting the heart. You know, getting to know what is happening in a person's heart, not just the child. And if you allow me, there's something that came to my mind when I saw that clip.
Yes.
And I don't know this family, neither do I know the child, but I highly suspect that this child is hurting emotionally.
Yes.
And he may also be growing up in an environment whereby he has seen things. Probably he has even there's a mother that the society is bashing.
Yes.
Probably the boy has seen the mother hurting, going through some crisis and hurting relationships, and therefore, just like we say, when children are exposed to trauma, like when they, children who are in the war-torn countries, one of the things you realize is that even when they are playing, they play, warlike games.
Yeah, they draw guns.
They draw guns, and probably this is what could be happening in the life of this child.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to establish a system in schools, even at home, those neighbors who are analyzing this family. I think the first thing they should have done is to show love, an expression of love and caring, so that they can be allowed by these two people, the mother and the child, to access their heart. The moment you access a person's heart, whether he is a terrorist or whoever this person is, the moment you are able to access his internal world, I can tell you are able to transform them.
Okay, so we lead with love. But at the same time, I would like to point out that through those videos, particularly the first and the third, one thing really occurred apparently. He kept repeating, I'm not gay. They said I'm gay, this and that gay. And then the second one, when he came with his cousin or relative, whatever, he said, he's also not gay. He's just... So there is an element of sexuality identity that everybody seems to be ignoring. But it seems like this child is trying to figure themselves out, or is living in an environment where his sexuality is consistently questioned, that he feels the need to start with a disclaimer, by the way, I'm not gay. So what do you have to say about that?
That statement raises a lot of questions, which probably we may not want to go into details because we are not having them as our clients.
Yes.
But I would say that, again, rolling the ball back to the caregivers, because even when it comes to our sexuality, we tend to get our identity because our caregivers are helping us to know where we are, even as far as sexuality is concerned. And I want to say that the question of sexuality begins as soon as a child is born.
Yeah.
The way we dress them, the way we talk to them, the way we do all manner of things. But it appears like this boy really needs someone to work with him to be able to discover himself.
Yes.
Because it appears to me that he is also feeling like he's in a very deep forest. Probably doesn't know his way out.
Yes.
And the reason why he is a child is so that there can be a grown-up who is working with him. But I was able to pick from the narrative that there is a lot missing as far as his caregiver aspect is concerned.
And that brings us back to the issue of parenting. And as he has pointed out, that there's something obviously missing. And we can, from the stories we've had, we cannot confirm, but the dad is not in the picture. So when it comes to a boy, I would imagine the input of a dad or a male figure of authority is very important. So how would the mom supplement for this, or any other mom? Forget about this particular issue in case you're dealing with the kid, because when it comes to sexuality, I would imagine it would be the father that would help actually aid in bringing him to realizing which way is right.
Absolutely. The role of the dad and the mom are equally important, and we cannot ignore the fact that if there is a gap with a father, then something has to be done to be able to just bring in that aspect of, I mean, I have a son. There are just some things that I cannot give him. And in fact, they just look really weird when I try to get them to get him to do some things. But I think for me, the first and foremost thing is to really, again, go back to whoever the parent is in that child's space at that point, are they stable? Are they in a healthy space? Because when you're in a healthy space, then you're able to invite others, other male figures that are necessary into that space without bringing in baggage. Okay, and acknowledge that they do have an important part. So I don't know where, the question people are asking is, where is the father in all this? I don't know where the father is, but if the mother is okay, she is able to invite people in her space that can complement what it is. And we also need to realize that the emotional health of a child is really first and foremost, and I think I've said this and I'll repeat it, first and foremost as a result of a stable adult in their life who is intentional and is intentional about connecting with them. So sometimes even if it's just that one parent, okay, if they are stable and they're being intentional about connecting with their child, then it takes the child in a very long way into developing their emotional wellness. That does not mean that the other gender is not important. But let's first of all clear that. And once we do that, then the other people who come in, they come in to complement. And then now we produce that, wholesome individual. And
also, it also brings to mind the fact that if you are a single mom and you're taking care of a kid, that doesn't mean that your love life is dead. You basically have a life to live. But then how does a parent juggle that without necessarily exposing the kid to various male figures that might not? Because if you're dating several people, you're basically looking for the right person, and therefore if you're looking, that means you haven't found the right father figure for this kid. So how can single mothers approach dating without influencing negatively on the children?
I think first of all is not to look at it as a juggling act. It's just how do you integrate the different aspects of your life to make a whole. Okay, and again, you are only able to do that if you're clear about your space. Even as I'm thinking about love, what does that mean to me? Okay, because I do not just want to bring in a father figure for my son. I want to be able to find my own wholeness and fullness, okay? And I want to be able to be sure that what I'm doing is, what am I contributing into this relationship? So it's bigger than just looking at getting a father figure for your child. Changing from one partner to another, I mean, I don't know what gets people to that point. But for me, it's back to, are you whole? What are you looking to get from a relationship?
Absolutely. So it starts with the mother.
Exactly.
So institutionally speaking, John Willis, when you talk about kids needing healthy mental health, being healthy mental wise, and of course emotionally, we can basically tell from the words of these kids that there are a lot of issues going on. Somebody in a panel before suggested that every school needs to get to a point where they have a doctor or a nurse and also a psychologist, a resident psychologist for the children, not just a teacher that will get a bit of counseling training. Do you think this is something that could benefit this particular school environment?
It is very, very important. Actually, I would take it further and say every neighborhood should have a psychologist. Because the challenges that we have in our society, where a parent goes to work and we are so used to traumatizing each other at work, then you go back home, you find a child who is not performing well, and you talk to this child, you accuse this child of not working hard, then you go to school, you traumatize the teacher, then the teacher is traumatized by another teacher. So the environment is toxic. And so what needs to happen is creating a strategic way forward where we have people who can address the emotional well-being of not only the children, but the adults in that institution. And I think if if we take that dimension, we will have a healthy nation, and that does not only apply to those who are in schools. We've had members of parliament, we've had churches fighting on TV,
On TV, yes.
We've had people insulting each other. I think as a nation we just need therapy.
Yeah.
And this will help us heal, and this will help us have a sense of humanity when we are dealing with each other. And as we talk about single moms, I am a product of a single mom.
Yeah.
And so I think as a society we need to stop stigmatizing single moms.
And shaming them.
Yes, and shaming them. And I think we need also to acknowledge the place of women in our society and the role that they are playing. I kid you not, the effort that a single mom that they bring forth to see that their children are successful, it is intense. It is intense, and the sacrifices that they have to be subjected to as individuals, it is intense. And so I think we need to not sympathize with them, but have empathy and recognize that they are part of our society and they can be a source of transformation, because currently we have more single moms than what we would call stable families in our society. But I think every institution should have a psychologist.
All right, I agree. Now, if by that video alone, Mr. Kago, aside from all the vitriol that came out from that video, there was also an element of economic shaming. Because the girl or schoolmate who was being talked about was being told about where they come from, their neighborhood is they cannot pay rent, they come and take loans so that they can pay rent. I mean, these are things that we even see even amongst adults, where we look down on each other for just because of our economic, what we have in terms of money. So, I mean, where do kids pick this up, and how can it be reversed so that they put value on things other than cash and what you look like you have at home?
Thank you. If you allow me, have a second.
Yeah.
Can I add something on what she said?
Sure.
When it comes to mothers wanting to shift or to
date. Yeah.
We make a very big mistake, and not just mothers, it's even fathers who are probably widowers and stuff like that. We leave the children out of the picture.
Yes. And
it's the high time we began to realize that when a child is attached to you as the mother, they are also partakers of what you want to get yourself into.
Okay.
And therefore, it is very, very important, number one, to introduce them to that after you have discovered yourself what she has said. And you have been able to identify the need that you are seeking from a relationship. Yeah. Then it's the high time to be able to introduce your children into what you want to do. Okay. Because they feel threatened, somebody is coming to take their space, and they are able to react in various ways. Yeah. Coming back to your question of the way this child described the other child in terms of their economic status. Yeah. I would again say this is as a result of the misplaced, wrong definition, societal definition of success and wealth. And this is what even our children are copying. And I think it's the high time as caregivers we began to teach our children the principles of making wealth. Okay. And I speak to parents. And you know, nowadays, parents think that taking your children to a school that is going to help them make them speak Queen's English, and those posh schools, we define that, we tend to think that that is fashion, it is a sign of prestige, but I want to say that a school or an environment that is able to instill virtues and values in your children, not necessarily looking at what they perform or how they perform, is better. Look at some young men who dug a tunnel into a bank somewhere in Thika. Yeah. Because they want to acquire wealth. Yeah. But we do not want to address the principles that even God has put in place. Yes. Leave alone the rules and the laws that we have in the land. the principles that God has put in place of working hard, respecting our small beginning. Because if this child has been told that it is important to respect a small beginning, then the fact that his friend is not where they are economically would not have come into play. Because wealth grows. And the moment we learn to teach our children to respect their small beginnings and to embrace the aspect of work, because work is very important for our financial success. And I want to dare say here that this is the same reason why we have even very educated people in our society today. We are not falling short of learned people with degrees and PhDs. What we are lacking as a country, as a nation, is a people who have virtues, people who of integrity. That is why you see very senior people, professors, when they are given public offices, they begin to squander them from the public offer. Because of that, it is actually poverty.
Yes, it's a need.
And you realize that you are poor the moment you begin to fear poverty.
Okay, all right. And on that note, I'm not going to water it down. We have had Caroline Chakua, who was a parenting coach. That was Moffat Cargo's a psychologist, as well as author John Willis Joroge, giving us their take on what they feel are the solutions to that particular problem that points to what is ailing society. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll have international news for you. Do not go too far.